this girl traversing parallel worlds and going through them. Today I wanted to talk about a show because I haven't done a show review in a while, but I genuinely fell in love with this show. This show is His Dark Materials by HBO. Now, if you don't know, His Dark Materials is actually based on a book series by the same name, His Dark Materials, by the author Philip Pullman. Now, this book series came out in 1997 and ended in the 2000s. So these books are nearly 26 years old at this point, which is insane that they are just now in 2019 to the end of last year getting an adaptation. I wanted to talk about the adaptation even though I've read these books probably 7 years ago. I read these a bit before I had my channel, and I'm going on the 5th year of doing this kind of content for you guys. So I'm a bit rusty on the books, so I'm not going to remember everything. The books consist of The Golden Compass, The Supple Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. Now, before we go any farther, as usual, there will be spoilers for the series and, of course, for the books that the series was based on. So if you do not want those spoilers, trust me, you are going to want to click off now, because I don't want to spoil this series for anyone, because it is like probably my favorite adaptation that ever exists, even maybe above the Harry Potter books. And I love the Harry Potter movies, so let's get into this. Now, as I said, we waited a long time for an adaptation of this beloved series, and I feel like HBO knocked it out of the park. I went and watched the behind the scenes stuff because I love doing that. Throughout the behind the scenes stuff, you could tell that the people making the show 100% genuinely cared about the books that the show is based off of, and we're not just doing the show as a shameless cash grab, which a lot of adaptations are definitely guilty of. But the adaptation of these books into this show was most certainly not one of those that it was guilty of. The showrunner said that there would be 3 seasons, 1 season for each book, and he was going to stick to that, which is absolutely commendable. I love that he's going to stick to the books, because oftentimes in adaptations of books, they keep going and going and going just because the adaptation is popular, and then the more they keep going past the end of the source material, the more they start to muddy the waters and get away from the original source material. Our main character, Lyra, lives in another world where her soul lives outside of her body as an animal. Like, you know how everyone says they have a spirit animal? This is literal in Lyra's world. The animal is always with them. It can feel everything that the human feels, and the human feels everything the animal can feel. And when kids are younger, their demons can switch forms because they're not fully matured yet, as people are still trying to figure out who they are in themselves, which is why their demons can change into different types of animals. But when they hit puberty, their demon basically settles into a certain form. So Lyra comes from a completely different parallel world where it's like all sorts of fancy old technology, and the magisterium kind of rules over everything as this religious hierarchy. You have witches in her world, you have the magisterium, you have the demons, you have airships, which are basically zeppelins, and it's just so cool to see the contrast. And then you get to the second book, The Supple Knife, which throws Lyra into our world, and it's specifically mentioned to be our world. So this book series and this show revolve around this girl traversing parallel worlds and going through them and proving that this religious hierarchy is keeping things from people to correct their narrative, and that they're worshiping a false entity that is not the true entity. And it's all about that. So if you don't like that sort of thing, I get it. Something that I liked that they did change from the books was they introduced Will slightly into the first season, and we got to know his story a little bit more than we did in the book. Because in the book, he doesn't show up until the second book, where he randomly scares Lyra as she's in a different world looking around, because he pops up out of nowhere. So you're like, who is he? Should we trust him? Where did he come from? Why is he here? Like, it gives you that sort of insight into Will, having him kind of weaved in Lyra's story in the first season. And I thought that was a brilliant change, because it gave us more time to get to know Will and get to like Will as a character, because he's very different from Lyra, where Lyra is headstrong, leap first, ask later, like silver-tongued, lie as quick as she can to get out of situations. Will is very honest and very mature and very, like, protective and not held back. Like, he's brave, but he's not like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go now. He's very, like, let's think this through, and then if the risk outweighs the reward, or if we don't have a choice, let's go. Like, so they cannot be more polar opposite. But I think that their connection in the show was really well handled. And, like, the visual effects in this show are absolutely stunning. The animals look 100% real, and I guarantee they will look real for years to come, because they already look photorealistic. And unlike what they did in The Lion King, they actually let those CGI animals show emotion. And something that they said that they used to help get a certain emotion were puppets. There were a lot of puppets on the scene. They would do, like, a shot with the puppet, and then they'd do one without the puppet, so to make it easier to CGI. And I thought that was brilliant. Like, it's not the first time puppets have been used in media, but just to have, like, just to give your character, your realistic looking characters, some emotion and make it easier that way is brilliant. Once again, like I said, you can show through all the effort put in that they genuinely cared about this series. They wanted to tell the story because they grew up reading these books. They wanted to see this world brought into reality, and they did it. It wasn't a shameless cash grab, and the people cared about the books that they were making. And I wish more adaptations did the same thing, because this is a spot-on adaptation. The only changes they made genuinely helped the story and genuinely gave us more room to care about a character that's central to the story. Just the actors were spot on. The effects are amazing. And I cannot wait to get this entire series on DVD, because I love it. And I don't know if you guys have HBO, but if you do and you like this series, it's definitely worth the watch.